Okay, so this is going to be a little bit untraditional research meeting. The start of it will be that you'll go into the room, the murder lab, and have some experiences in there. You're going to test out the first person victim before we start. And since not everybody is here yet, then I think you should just go in and check it out. You have to be warned because if you have some traumas from wars or if you experience some really violent things, it could maybe trigger some of your former experiences. So I just wanted to say that before you start. So please get into the room and try it out.
It's built for questionnaire, so the game will stop and ask you to do a questionnaire. Ignore that, just press continue and keep playing. Okay?
This is also the first time I've seen the Peggy
thing.
They actually have things like what it's being rated on. It's kind of cool.
Okay, so now we have something common to talk about after this. Before we discuss it a bit more in details, I'll just run through some slides. Some of you have seen part of it in Michigan, where we presented at the Meaningful Play, and some have not, so we'll just go through it. Yeah, just for the record, as you know, I presented myself last Thursday, but now again, Henrik Schoenhoff. I have a Master of Arts in Film and Media Science and a Bachelor of Science and Computer Science from University of Copenhagen. And now I'm currently teaching a lot at Aalborg University in Copenhagen at Mediology, and I'm also doing a PhD where I'm doing engagement in games and emergent interactive narrative experiences. The other persons on the crew are Faisal Fuad Khalil and Javid Faisi, and they were master students last year, and then they were hired as research assistants to continue developing this experience that you've just tried. And then we also have another guy on the team, Luis Emilio Bruni, who's an associate professor also at Mediology, and he was also co-supervising Faisal and Javid during their master project. And it's done at Mediology, and you heard last week talk about Mediology, you know, the combination of media and technology and so on. But the idea from Faisal and Javid came actually because when I was supervising them, we developed a new way of structuring interactive narratives events. We're going to go back to that and look at that a little bit later. And then when they have talked about that and developed that, then we talked about how to use it for something, how to put content into it. And then they said, yeah, we thought about, it was last winter and the new Sherlock Holmes film just came out, and they said, yeah, let's do this Sherlock Holmes mystery. That could be interesting to use this interactive structure for that. But then my brother, he went to the Danish Film School, and there the teachers always say, try to find your personal story. And knowing that Javid and Faisal are refugees from Iraq and Afghanistan, I thought, well, maybe you can find something there. And they actually said, well, we want to promote peace in the world somehow. And actually, this was the idea that they wanted to try to create awareness of the consequences of war by doing this experience. So, as we do at Mediology, we talked a bit about it. Should we cut down the lights or for the... Okay. At Mediology and the Aalborg model, as Lars told the other day, we always have a problem we have to solve. So instead of just making an interactive narrative, we have a problem that we are solving. So how to create awareness about the consequences of war, or how would it be to be a civilian on the ground during an airstrike while your town is being attacked? So that was the question. So the goal of it is to allow participants to practice good actions in a war scenario by communicating a theme concerned with social and ethical issues and how it is to be a victim of war by inverting the first-person shooter conventions while utilizing this interactive dramatic experience model that we developed, and tragedy. As you have seen, it is really tragic events that's happening, and I will be talking a little bit more in detail about these things later. So the purpose of it is, as we said, to create awareness about the consequences of war, and it's about initiating discussions about this theme at high schools and colleges, you know, with the help of a teacher. It's not that the kids should sit alone and play this at home. It should be in a setting where the teacher let them play it for 10 minutes, and then after that you talk about how is it actually to be a refugee, why are there so many refugees, and so on. Because kids are normally used to play a lot of first-person shooter games, and you're always equipped with some kind of weapon so you can do something. But in a real war situation, you don't really have a handgun in your living room or something, or a rocket launcher in the backyard, you know, so you're actually experiencing this in another way. So it should also exemplify the potential of communicating social and ethical issues through interactive drama, storytelling, engagement, and video games. So these were the purposes of this project. So finding a way to solve the problem, the first part was to identify triggers of aggression in games by doing a literature review. And we know this is a problematic area because some research say that, you know, we create violent kids, and others say, well, it's not really like that, it's just like seeing a film, and then people say, well, film is also creating violence. However, Faisal, he did a very thorough literature review about these issues. And then these reverse factors that could encourage empathy and pro-social behavior, we could use those to invert this experience. And then we utilize the potential of combining interaction and tragedy. So the triggers that were found by Faisal was the copycat violence. It's when you see something happens, then you want to go out in the real world and try it out for fun, maybe just with your kids and so on. I saw a James Bond film, and I saw he made a kick in the stomach, and then the next day in the schoolyard, this little guy is trying to do the same, you know, so these kind of things. Then of course there's always a presence of weapons in the games, and that utilizes, or you can use it for doing actions that are violent, because the weapons are there, so you want to use them. And then also practicing aggressive solutions. So instead of running away from this guy, then you might approach him and try to shoot him. I had some students from Konstantin's class yesterday. They were trying to jump on these soldiers to get them down, you know. So they were really used to doing these things. So these are the triggers of aggression. So how do we use these triggers of aggression to invert the experience? And we see here the first-person shooter and the first-person victim. In the first-person shooter, we are behind the gun. You know, we're always standing like that. We have that viewpoint. But suddenly, in the first-person victim, we still have a first-person point of view, but we are now in front of the guns. So the situation is, of course, turned around. There's weapons in the first-person shooters. Obviously, there's no weapons in the first-person victim. Here, you're always attacking, and in the first-person victim, you are under attack. The aggressive solutions is inverted by doing non-violent solution. You can actually not do anything. You know, so you can run away, or you can try to hide, or something like that. And you are normally in the first-person shooter, you are advancing by killing and destroying. And here you are advancing while you are experiencing the tragic consequences of all this killing and destroying. You see your girlfriend being tortured, for example, or, you know, there's a place, I know Lars, he saw that yesterday, where there was kind of a massacre. A lot of, I don't know, did any of you see this? Yeah, okay. So that's kind of the consequence of that. So in the first-person shooter, the hero is rewarded. You know, you get bigger guns, you advance, you get new levels and so on. But here, the hero is punished, you know. Some of you, have you tried to be shot or died in the end? You also?
I think I died.
Yeah. You, Jason?
I was jumping on the landmines because I liked the effects, but it didn't seem to...
Yeah, exactly. And that was a choice because we wanted actually people to go through it, and so they couldn't die. And we have all this with meters and so on, but then people would be looking at the meters instead, you know, see how much health you have left and so on. Okay. So the storyline for this inverted experience would be that it's sad and dramatic events versus advancing by destruction and killing. The narrative context is a series of these tragic events, And they're manifesting the impact of extreme violence, you know, what happens when a town is actually being attacked. I don't know, was anyone standing up in the tower when the rocket was coming towards them? Yeah, you were? Yeah. Did you get out of the tower before it exploded in it? Or?
Now I'm not sure, since
Yeah.
it's not possible to die, but I think so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah?
Yeah, I left it, and I watched in the tower the rockets hitting the other buildings.
Yeah.
I left the tower, looked at the tower, and then a rocket hit.
Yeah. Was that on purpose because you saw something coming, or you thought maybe that it was going to explode there? Or?
I was gonna go see. I was actually walking towards to see what happened when the
Yeah.
rockets hit, and then I thought because I left the tower that's why the rocket went. I didn't know at that point. I hadn't gotten damaged yet.
Yeah.
So I thought it was scripted. That it was just I was always going to see that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we have this powerlessness of victims. You know, you can't do anything, and I know maybe some of you felt frustrated that you actually couldn't do something, but that's the purpose, because you don't have any guns. You cannot really do something. You cannot open the door to your brother who's being, you know, tortured and stuff like that. So we have physiological arousal, you know, when you are playing and you get this adrenaline kick, versus experience some of the physiological reactions associated with fear, frustration, and powerlessness. I've read some of the feedback we did on some evaluations where people are getting very anxious and so on. They feel that there's a bomb hitting them and so on. Any one of you had kind of these feelings about this? Yeah? Abe, you were nodding?
Just aesthetically, it was, I mean, just audio-wise especially. I mean, it's just, if it was loud enough, it was really jarring. And then I think whether I was processing it or not, you know, it was just making my heart flutter fast. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly when the bombs hit, like in particular, and I found myself doing things like listening really closely. I too found the audio very effective, and listening for things like, okay, what does that sound mean? Is that the sound of the bombs coming? And you know, and I immediately start looking around to try and figure out if that's what it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing something and not being able to visually identify the source of that sound is a really kind of, like, you hear this helicopter, or maybe it's a gun, you're not quite sure, and you're looking, and like, should I be able to see it? And then it's like, where is it? And you can't quite tell if it's behind you, and that's really kind of an anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're trying to do with that, yeah?
For me, the experience of playing a first-person shooter is always kind of funny, because I feel already kind of helpless.
Yeah.
It's like, where are my feet? Where are my hands? Okay, I'm just like, I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
Kind of like, I don't know what's behind me. I mean, actually, in a way, like, the sound was like one of the strongest cues and the most disturbing, but it's also good feedback on, like, okay, I'm in a space and I can, you know, which is not so common in first-person shooters. I don't know, like, for me, I had been playing Half-Life 2 a couple of weeks ago, and the contrast between a game where you have to go where they're shooting at you, like, that's how you know that you're on the right track.
Yeah.
You go somewhere and then everybody's shooting at you. It's like, okay, so I must be on the, and here I could hide.
Yeah.
Like, I actually saw, like, all the bombing and all that from outside, and I was kind of like stuck, because I think that maybe I missed this stuff, but maybe that's survival. That's what I was trying to do. It's kind of like, okay, so if there are bombs around, I should not be in a building. That was my instinct.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a bit of like, maybe because I have a different experience from first-person shooters, like, it was like, maybe it wasn't so different, or it wasn't so shocking, if that makes sense.
Yes?
I think I was in that very second area with the gas station.
Yeah.
And I got stuck because of my own fear from the game. Because I would look at the tunnel that was off to the next place, and there was the soldier standing in front of it, and I'm like, oh, well, I can't go that way. So I'd turn around and like to go back to the first one. There's a guy standing in front of that tunnel too. And I'm sitting there going, oh, damn it, right? Like, I didn't know what to do. I was hiding in buildings. Every time I went in a building, the building would get blown up. Stuff would fall on me. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. It was, which is weird, because I'm used to playing like stealth games. Like, I'm a big Metal Gear fan. And my inner Solid Snake would have been just like, you know, walk around it, which is in fact what you have to do. But I was so cowed that all of my genre knowledge just evaporated, and I locked up.
The thing that I found, and it's not about realism so much, but I'm imagining that if I was in a situation like that, you know, how far into the conflict would you be totally on your own? Because it seems like you start in like a family home or something like that, and I would expect that if this is the beginning, for example, if I'm in a home already, there would be more people around, and that there would be like a bit of communication about, you know, feedback about what to do, like what's going on. I think that was a bit of the kind of confusing part, and maybe, you know, it's an expectation, but you would have a bit more of a network of support. It's like it would. My impression is that you would have to be in a conflict like later on to be that alone without anybody around you. And the
I didn't interrupt. I wanted to agree. I think it's very insightful, and to me, like a large part of the tragedy of the war that's being depicted would be the depopulation of this street and people being displaced from their homes. And so it really is a situation that when these missiles strike, these buildings are destroyed. From a sort of in-game perspective, I did think, oh, there goes my flat screen TV. Because everything else, there weren't really people around at that point that I could see or know about. I mean, there was a hint that there were a few people on the street. But so being in this situation, sort of having that moment of experience is one thing, but it seems like there's a possibility for richer context, that somehow things came to this situation, and that understanding of what the life of the city was before would make this even more striking.
Yeah, exactly. Did anyone get a phone call from this woman? Yeah. Did you hear what she said?
Yeah, it was something about meeting her in front of the Photoshop, which I was running around trying to find the Photoshop and never found it.
Same problem. It made me wish I were the person in the game with prior knowledge of where the Photoshop was, because she assumed I knew, and I was like, oh, of course, I'll just go.
Well, and that was a little surprising to me, because clearly, to me that was a clue that like, oh, I have a history, I have a place, I should know this area, and I should know who this woman was. So I was kind of looking for clues about, to tell me these things, to learn more about myself. But my apartment was just so spare that there was so little to go on.